Yes, indeedy. Here we are back with another edition of Giants Collective. The four of us are back together again. Adriana, Anthony, Entertainer. We're all back to talk about some New York Giants football, the best team in the NFL 12 years ago. I believe that was today. 12 years ago today was the last time we won a Super Bowl. Last time we were any good. The Super Bowl was great. And Adriana, I definitely want to get your take on the Senior Bowl because I knew we were there last week. But since we're talking about the Super Bowl, and since we just brought that up, that was 12 years ago today. And Chris, I know you mentioned this off camera. Obviously, the Hall of Fame.
13 years ago, wasn't it? It was 2012, wasn't it?
13 years ago. Sorry. Yes. 13 years ago. Jesus. I wish
it's been longer than you're giving us credit for.
Yeah. 13 years ago. My bad. Lucky 13.
Yeah.
But obviously, Eli won his second Super Bowl MVP. 2011, he was fantastic in that season, threw for almost 5,000 yards, set the record for fourth quarter touchdown passes. We had a number of come from behind victories. He set a record, which still stands for most passing yards in a single postseason with 1,219. He is up for the Hall of Fame. Tomorrow they announce the 5 inductees. Adriana, is he a Hall of Famer, and why or why not?
He better be.
Yeah.
I mean, I know there's.
If you said no to that, by the way, and I'm very excited to hear the rest of your take. If you said no to that, I would have canceled the channel right now. I would have left this channel. You better be saying yes to that, but go ahead.
Well, and I'm like, any Giants fan that argues against that is just insane. But when you look at the span of his career, and then you, of course, look at what Tom Brady did. I mean, when you stack up, especially that 18-0 team, what would have been against the Giants team, like it's just, they were so different. This 9-7 team that obviously didn't have the talent that the Patriots had, and they go and they beat them in the Super Bowl. He's the only quarterback to ever beat Tom Brady twice. Tom Brady is going to go down as the best quarterback that's ever played. I think that you really have to weigh that as part of it. And for anyone whose argument is that his career wins are at 500, I think that's total BS. We're talking about a team sport. And yes, the quarterback is the most important position. But at the end of the day, they can't throw the ball, catch the ball, get sacks, make stops, kick field goals. It's a team sport. So I think that it shouldn't be weighed so heavily, the career wins and everyone being like, oh, well, he's only 500. He has some pretty impressive stats. He's in the top 10 for a lot of things in the NFL. And he's a 2-time Super Bowl MVP, which there are not many quarterbacks who can make that claim to fame. So, I think it's no question. I think he should be first ballot. I don't know if he will be, but I hope that he is.
Anthony, is he a first ballot Hall of Famer?
Absolutely. I think it's an easy call. And I think the point that Adriana just made was really interesting about his career 500 record. And I quickly did a Google search of it. There are 5 quarterbacks in the Hall of Fame right now with a record of 500 or below. So if that's something that people are going to use against Eli Manning, I think it's a bad argument because there are several Hall of Famers who made it in with a 500 or below record, and he is right at 500. And also, I mean, the longevity of his career in and of itself, I think, is one of his most impressive traits and arguments that he has to make it to the Hall of Fame. We look around the NFL every single year. We see season-ending injuries to top stars, and Eli Manning somehow went through unscathed. And it's not like he didn't play through injuries. I mean, he did. I actually saw a clip of him recently talking about a separated shoulder that he played through. I think he suffered in like week 13 or something. Played through the rest of the year. Doesn't care. And that matters, you know, the ability to stay on the field and play for that long. That is going to hurt your win-loss record in some respects, especially if you're on a bad team, but you're still out there and you're still playing, and that's impressive. His career postseason record is great. All of the records that he set in the postseason are tremendous. And of course, his battles with Tom Brady that he came out on top of. So Eli Manning, I think, is one of the best New York Giants players of all time. And if he doesn't make it to the first ballot of Hall of Fame, I will be rioting tomorrow night.
There you go. Chris, I know your take, but go ahead, give it to him.
I don't know if he's going to get in first ballot. I think he should. I don't know if he will, just because if you look at the history of the quarterback position, a lot of the ones that are in there, it took them a couple of times around to get in. So we'll see. I'm excited to see if he does get in. I think he should. There's not a whole lot for me to add. I mean, I've talked about it extensively throughout my time on YouTube. He's my favorite athlete of all time. He absolutely is a Hall of Famer. And a lot of people, you get these false narratives, like Anthony, the 500 record. Warren Moon had a 500 record. Joe Namath, I would imagine probably had a below 500 record. There are plenty of quarterbacks that you could say that about. Troy Aikman, great record, but as Bad Dog always says, he only had one season his entire career where he threw over 20 touchdowns because he had the greatest supporting cast in the history of the NFL. Eli Manning in 2011, I will say it till the day I die, is one of the greatest single seasons I've ever seen a quarterback have in the NFL. Now, people look at the stats, they'll say, 29 touchdowns, 16 picks. How good was he really? They had the worst rushing attack in the entire league that year. They were dead last in rushing offense. The regular season defense was bottom 5 because they had a lot of injuries that year. They turned it up in the playoffs. But he carried that team to the playoffs that year. He beat the Patriots in Foxborough in the regular season. I was at the Packer game where they lost 38-35, where he was incredible in that game. I think he threw 4 or 5 touchdowns. He, start to finish that year, he had the most comeback wins, I think, in a single season at the time, or fourth quarter comebacks, whatever it was, in a regular season in the history of the NFL. He was money that year. And in the playoffs, I mean, just look at it. Just look at the guys that he slayed. Everybody talks about Brady, rightfully so, knocked him off twice. He also knocked off Brett Favre in Lambeau Field, a place where he never lost in the playoffs for the most part throughout the entirety of his career. Like, that was unheard of. Eli Manning went into there in negative 30-degree weather, knocked him off, knocked off Aaron Rodgers when he had a 15-1 football team, knocked off Tony Romo when the Cowboys were 13-3 that year and had a far superior roster, went into Dallas and knocked them off. I mean, it speaks for itself. And yes, you could say he was never elite outside of the 2011 season because he certainly was that year. That's all well and good, but he compiled stats, top 10 all time in touchdown passes when he retired, top 10 in a variety of things, like Adriana said. There's really, in my opinion, there's not a legitimate argument to keep him out. People say that the Manning name is going to help him get in. I actually view it from the opposite stance. I think the Manning name is what may make it more challenging for him to get in, because I think his entire career, he was always unfairly compared to Peyton Manning. If his name was Eli Smith and he played for the New York Giants in this market and knocked off Tom Brady twice, there wouldn't even be a debate. People would say, yeah, he's a Hall of Famer. He's a Hall of Famer. And one of the most amazing things to me about the New York Giants and Eli Manning, and not Eli Manning specifically, the New York Giants, somebody said it to me on Twitter. I couldn't believe it. Since the days of the 80s with, obviously LT and all, the Giants have only had 3 Hall of Famers during that entire span, I believe. LT, Michael Strand, and I'm forgetting somebody. If Eli Manning, Derek Carson. If Eli Manning doesn't get in, that would mean that the Giants had no Hall of Famers that played for both of those Super Bowl teams. Of course, Strand played for one of them. He's a Hall of Famer. He better get in. It would be a travesty if he didn't.
Eli is a Hall of Famer. I don't care. People are like, he didn't make any all-pro teams. It's because you have to be the best. And he played against Aaron Rodgers. He played Tom Brady. Like, the all-pro is the entire league. Nobody's beating Tom Brady. Nobody's beating Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees. They were definitely the class at that time. That doesn't make Eli Manning less of a player. And again, you talk about the players that he knocked off. You look at that 2011 season in general. Remember the game in Dallas? They were down 34-22 with 5 minutes to go, and he drove back. We lose that game. We missed the playoffs. He didn't allow it to happen. He went down there, he scored 2 touchdowns. We beat Dallas on a blocked field goal, and then the rest is history. Eli Manning is one of a handful of quarterbacks to win 2 Super Bowl MVPs. Every other quarterback that's won multiple Super Bowl MVPs is in the Hall of Fame. There's no way you keep Eli Manning out of the Hall of Fame.
People want to. What's that list, Bad Dog? It's Pat Mahomes now. It's Tom Brady. He will be. Eli Manning.
Joe Montana. Terry Bradshaw. Bart Starr.
That's it, right?
Bart Starr did it too. The first 2 Super Bowls. They're all in the Hall of Fame. And Brady and Mahomes are definitely going to be in the Hall of Fame without question. So I hate that. Oh, look at his record. Look at this. Because like Anthony said, like Gianna said, I understand it's a quarterback-driven league. It always has been. They're the most important position. They handle the ball every time on offense, but they can't play defense. They can't kick field goals. They can't make tackles. It's not what they're asked to do. When the chips were down and the Giants had to have it, Eli was always there. Even when he began his career, and he struggled at the beginning of his career, you could always count him to come back and win football games. That is something that is not taught, man. There's a lot of great players. You look at Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers won 1 Super Bowl his entire career. Okay, Brett Favre won 1 Super Bowl his entire career. There's a lot of quarterbacks that don't win.
Dan Marino never won one.
Who's that?
Dan Marino never won one.
Right. There's a lot of great quarterbacks that never won one. So again, the team record thing, I hate that. And that's really just what detractors want to say. Just haters want to say, oh, he was only a 500 quarterback. Oh, he was never an all-pro quarterback. Well, that just tells me you didn't watch the game. Because to Anthony's point, the guy never missed a game due to injury at all. He was tough as nails. I'll always look back at the 2011 NFC Championship game as the defining moment in his career, playing against one of the best defenses in the league, constantly getting up off the ground, picking the turf out of his helmet, throwing for over 300 yards and 2 touchdowns, and leading us to another Super Bowl. And then the throw he made to Mario Manningham in the first Super Bowl, the catch was amazing. It was amazing Eli got out of it. The catch was impressive. The throw by Eli to Manningham, you will not find a better throw anywhere.
Ever.
It's one of the greatest throws in the history of the Super Bowl. The man's a Hall of Famer. Not only is he a Hall of Fame player, he's a Hall of Fame person. How do you not love Eli Manning? Seriously. You see him on Instagram, you see these posts. How do you not love the guy? He's hilarious, man. So
did you guys watch the Pro Bowl?
2011, that same year, early on in the year, if you recall, Bad Dog, I think it was like week 3 or 4 for about 3 weeks. He played with plantar fasciitis that year too. He always played through injuries, Eli Manning, which he had to. He'll be playing 200 plus straight games in a row. But yeah, he's a Hall of Famer, man. Anybody that debates it, you're debating a wall, in my opinion. He's a Hall of Famer.
Oh, John, what did you say? I'm sorry, I didn't catch it.
When you were talking about Eli, did you guys watch him in the Pro Bowl? I mean, I love watching him coach. He's so funny, like the way that he talks to the guys, the interviews that he did when they showed them pouring the Gatorade on him. Like, I was like, I want Eli to come coach some part of the Giants because that was, I feel like, one of the first times. So he kind of got like an up close like feel for what he'd be like as a coach. And I just feel like he would be amazing.
And listen, you people out there that don't want Eli Manning to be a Hall of Famer, say he's not a Hall of Famer, can you give us Giants fans a break? We have had a rough 12 years. Can you give us some happiness, please? We're sitting here watching our most hated rival being led to the Super Bowl by a player that was our best player for 6 years. Now he's over there, ran for over 2,000 yards. You got to watch this disgusting Super Bowl, which we'll talk about, I'm sure. Give us some happiness, please. All right, thank you. That's all we ask for. Put Eli Manning in the Hall of Fame where he belongs.
First ballot. Get it done.
Speaking of the draft and coming up this year, Adriana, you were at the Senior Bowl. Give us a little bit of what you experienced there. Did you pick up anything? What did you see? Did you see were the Giants like enamored with anybody in particular? Were they talking to anybody? Like what did you see there? How was the experience?
So I loved it. I flew down Tuesday. So they have practices Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then the game on Saturday. But what's great about the practices is it's in a stadium with 10,000 people, but there's nowhere near close to that many people there. You can sit right in the front row and really get an up close view. I saw Mike Tomlin. I saw Kevin Stefanski. I saw Joe Shane. I didn't see Dable, and I was looking for him a lot. And I know that he was at the Shrine Bowl, and I wonder if he stayed at the Shrine Bowl or just stayed off the field, because I'm seeing all these other coaches, and I saw Joe Shane, Chris Nee. I saw someone else from the Giants who I didn't recognize. I think one of the special teams coaches was there too. No Brian Dable, which I thought was interesting. So Chris Nee was all over the offensive linemen. When they're doing the different practices, they move the players all around the field. They're doing their drills, whatever. Chris Nee was front row center through the whole offensive line and defensive line one-on-one battles, all the drills that they did, taking notes extensively. So curious to see how that, if it'll make any type of impact, depending on whatever offensive lineman they draft. When the quarterbacks on, I think it was day 2 or 3, when the quarterbacks came and started doing one-on-one drills with the wide receivers, Joe Shane came from upstairs and came down on the field and was up close and personal watching the quarterbacks and the wide receivers. So after the practice, if you have a press pass, you can go down on the field and talk to them. So I see Joe Shane, and he's talking to Sam Prince, and I was talking to Sam earlier. So I walk right over. I introduced myself to Joe, and he kind of gave me like a double take. And I was like, oh my God, he knows all the shit that I have talked about him on my podcast. And then I was like, there's no chance he knows who I am, but I was like, you never know. So anyway, I asked him about the quarterbacks. And what I wanted to ask was like, did you see anything from this group of quarterbacks specifically? And he was like, I'm not answering any questions about the quarterbacks. So I was like, okay, well, what about specific position groups? Was there a group that stood out to you? And he's like, not really. I mean, like the thing with the Senior Bowl is it's like the best of the players that are coming out and most likely to get drafted. So, he was very like, he's like, I'll answer generic questions. And I'm like, what the fuck am I supposed to ask him that's generic?
That's 100% annoying for you, but I'm actually glad Shane answered him that way. I don't want him giving away any draft day.
I know. Like, I don't expect him to tell me anything. I just wanted him to be like, I was impressed with the offensive linemen today. I liked what they did, or like they stood out. You know what I mean? Something like that. I did ask him if he got any calls about the third spot. And he said, not yet. It's too early. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if he was just bullshitting me or what. But he was very nice, very respectful in person. We talked about food for a little bit, and like a little part of me felt bad because I was like, oh, he is like very nice, but I'm also like, you better not fuck this up. So
yeah, I mean, listen, that's part of being a fan, though. I mean, that's what we do. Yeah. It's not our job. Our job is when you don't do well, it doesn't matter how nice the guy is. Their job is to get it done, and that's all we want. As Giants fans, as any fan, you're not rooting against your guys. You don't want to bash them. I said that all the time with the Daniel Jones. I sound like I want to come on here and make bad videos about Daniel Jones, but if he plays like shit, I'm going to say he played like shit. We don't have Daniel Jones anymore. We don't have Tommy DeVito anymore. We don't have Drew Lock anymore. We don't have a quarterback. Rumors came out, not rumors, I guess it came out that Jameis Winston said he would love to play for the Giants. He would love to play for the Giants. Anthony, I'll start with you. Why would he want to play for the Giants? What does he love about the Giants? We're 3-14. We have been a train wreck for years. What is there to love about coming here? Why do you think he said that? I have my opinion, but I want to hear you guys.
He specifically mentioned Brian Dable and his kind of relationship that he has with him and his admiration for him. And I know that a lot of Giants fans have soured on Brian Dable after the last 2 seasons, and it's understandable, but I still think that he's held in high regard across the NFL. I think there are a lot of players who, from time in Buffalo or even elsewhere in the league, Dable's been all over the place, and he's met a lot of players, and he's got a really good reputation among them. So I know, again, Giants locker room maybe looks like a mess sometimes, but who knows what the true cause of that really is. Maybe it's just not enough locker room leaders. I'll say I don't think that the locker room ever really soured on Brian Dable over the last couple of years. So I think that's the big selling point for Jameis Winston. It's also the selling point that I thought there would be for if we were talking about Justin Fields, which I think we discussed this a few weeks ago. Justin Fields would probably want to be coached by a Brian Dable, knowing that he has that upside. And maybe if he gets a good coach to unlock it, and maybe Jameis Winston feels the same way. Jameis Winston is 31 years old. Quarterbacks play until they're like 40. So, I mean, maybe there is still upside in Jameis Winston that he thinks could be unlocked by the right coach. Maybe that's what he sees in Brian Dable. And Brian Dable has a bit of an offense where sometimes he wants those quarterbacks to take those shots and those chances and push the ball downfield. And obviously we know that Jameis Winston loves to do that. He loves to force the ball and throw it downfield. Obviously it's a double-edged sword. Sometimes it creates big plays. Sometimes it creates big turnovers. But you know what? I really want to see a quarterback that isn't afraid of that anymore, because we were just talking about Eli Manning. He led the NFL in interceptions 3 times. That's one of the knocks that people have against him for getting into the Hall of Fame. Over the last few years, Giants quarterbacks have been way too afraid to turn over the ball, and I'm sick and tired of it. They play so scared and conservative. They don't open up the playbook at all because the quarterbacks aren't willing to push the ball downfield. You don't get certain touchdowns that Eli Manning had throughout his career without taking chances and throwing interceptions. Tired of watching the Giants quarterbacks be afraid to throw interceptions. So outside of why Jameis Winston might want to be with the New York Giants, I want him with the New York Giants because I know he'll be fun to watch. And this is probably a rebuilding year anyway. And he's a great locker room leader. And again, he will push the ball downfield. I always, whenever I have this conversation, whether I was having it about how Drew Lock suddenly just became so aware and so careful with the football during this season, wasn't throwing it downfield like we expected him to be. Think back to that season. I think it was 2013. Eli Manning at home. He went for a bunch of yards. I think the Giants ended up losing this game, 4th quarter comeback by the Seahawks, whatever. But that game against the Seahawks was prime Legion of Boom Seahawks. Eli Manning up against his own 20-yard line, just hitches forward, launches that thing downfield. Who's in coverage? Double coverage, Richard Sherman and Cam Chancellor. The ball gets batted around, and Victor Cruz ends up one-handing it, taking it to the house 80 yards. Eli Manning threw that ball against 2 of the best defensive backs in football, just gave his receiver a chance. The Giants don't take those chances anymore. Their quarterbacks, Daniel Jones, Drew Lock, Tim Boyle, all of them have been too afraid. Tommy DeVito have all been afraid to take those chances. And yes, that likely should have been an interception, that ball that Eli Manning threw. Most of the time it is, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's an 80-yard touchdown. And the Giants haven't taken those chances in years. So I want to see exactly the David Tyree catch high over the middle. It's a cardinal sin. He made it anyway. And look at it's a historic play. So I want to see a Giants quarterback that actually takes those chances because, yes, oftentimes it's a pick. Sometimes it's a big touchdown or a big play. So bring me Jameis Winston. I think he would really change the trajectory of this Giants offense. And I think a guy like Malik Neighbors, who just wants an opportunity to go get the ball, would really love to play with Jameis Winston. And again, can't stress enough, great locker room presence. So I rest my case there. I really think Jameis Winston would be a great signing for the New York Giants.
As they say, Anthony, scared money don't make no money. Scared money don't make no money. This is why I want Cameron Ward, because I feel like Cameron Ward is also a risk taker. And like you mentioned, we've been scared to throw the football. The Giants have when Chris and I would call these games, I'm sitting there going, all these passes seem like they're such high risk, low reward. These little 4-yard ins and post and stick patterns into double coverage. Like even if you catch it, it's 2nd and 6, but you got 2 guys there. If it gets batted up in the air, it's easily intercepted. So I'm with you. Take chances. You know, what do you got to lose? You know, so what? We've been losing. You got nothing to lose at this point. Chris, why do you think James?
I remember people were asking me, like, I don't know, with 3 or 4 weeks to go in the season, which free agent quarterback, when I looked at the list, do I think makes the most sense for the Giants? And I said Jameis Winston, because I don't think his market's going to be very high. He's not going to make a whole lot of money. He's a perfect veteran quarterback to bring in. He's very well liked, right? People love his personality. I see the appeal for him outside of just the Brian Dable thing. Like, this is a guy that clearly, I think, is probably going to have a career after football, in the media. Like he's got an unbelievable personality, right? So I think he could view New York as an appeal in that way as well. And I think for Jameis Winston, I kind of view it from the same light as Kurt Warner probably did when he was just not comparing Jameis Winston to Kurt Warner. That's ridiculous. But I think it's a similar situation that Kurt Warner had when he came here to try to start to get a resurgence for his career. People forget he was like close to being out of the league. Like the Giants, like he was barely a starter in the league at that point, and the Giants brought him in for 5 or 6 weeks to mentor Eli Manning. He played well enough to get an opportunity with the Arizona Cardinals. After that, he ended up going to a Super Bowl later in his career. I think Jameis Winston can look at it similar. You got Malik Neighbors. More than likely, I'm sure we'll talk about it throughout the stream. The Giants are probably going to try to add another good wide receiver in free agency. I don't know who it's going to be, but I think the weapons are going to be pretty good. Brian Dable is still viewed as a very good quarterback guru, coach throughout the league, even though Giants fans may not want to admit that. I think it's a really good fit for Jameis Winston. And I think Jameis Winston makes a world of sense for the Giants because he's a guy that you could clearly transition from after 6 to 8 weeks. You don't have to put added pressure on a Cam Ward or a Shedeur Sanders if you draft him. And if he's playing really well, let him finish out the season. So I think it makes a world of sense for the Giants.
Oh, Adriana, why is Jameis Winston say, I definitely want to play for the Giants?
I feel the same way as you guys feel. I also think that knowing that you can come into an offense where you have Malik Neighbors is one step ahead of some other teams who don't have anyone close to him. I mean, going back to the Pro Bowl, I don't know if you guys watched, but watching him compete with the Jamar Chases and the Justin Jeffersons, he is right up there with them. He is extremely competitive. Some of the catches that he was making, I was like, for the love of God, can you stop? Because if you get injured at the Pro Bowl, I personally am going to come strangle you. Like, it's not worth it. But he's so competitive, so talented. I mean, he was playing corner against and covering Jamar Chase and made a play on the ball. I was like, I mean, we got Travis Hunter right here. We don't need him. But I think that's a big selling point. And I think if you're looking at this Giants team and you have respect for Brian Dable and you know what he's done in the league, and look, I'm not going to say what Joe Shane said and said that I think this team is close. But I think when you look at the team as a whole and you see guys like Dexter Lawrence and Jermaine Illuminor and Andrew Thomas and Brian Burns and Malik Neighbors, like you see some of the talent and see that there is some potential there. Maybe not to be a playoff bound team next year, but maybe to just be a team that with a couple added pieces in free agency and in the draft, they will be maybe a little bit better than what we expect them to be. And if Dable is the coach that is really well respected, like Jameis Winston and other guys in the league, then there's got to be some sort of level of trust there that, okay, if I come here and I've got XYZ on this team and, I know obviously the goal is to win, then, I feel like I'm in a good place to do that. And I'm in a place that is going to support trying to do it this year. And again, I don't really know if that's what other people are thinking, but I think as a fan, like, yes, it feels like we're very far off, but there is some talent in certain positions. And Dexter Lawrence is one of the best. Malik Neighbors in his first Pro Bowl. So I just feel like there's some things there that can be exciting for someone like a Jameis Winston, an opportunity to revive his career, to be in New York. He's that much closer to being broadcasting or doing whatever he wants to do after his career. And, he's also going to have the opportunity to mentor a rookie. And I think I think him and a Russ Wilson type are the types of guys who would welcome that challenge and would be on board with it and would really feel like, they're the right person to do that. And I feel like Jameis Winston would be a great mentor. Like, I feel like if it was a rookie or Tommy DeVito, whoever it is, that he's really going to be someone who's a good listener, who's well-respected, and who's going to say to them, like, you cannot be afraid to throw the ball. And I don't know who was telling the other 3 quarterbacks that they shouldn't do that. Maybe it was Dable, but I just feel like Jameis Winston is going to be a good,
He'd also be a lot more relatable for a guy like a Shedeur Sanders. Jameis Winston has been in his shoes before. He knows what it's like to be the first overall pick, to come into the league with a lot of pressure. So I think it's a really good fit if their plan, which I think we all agree more than likely is to draft a quarterback with one of these first 3 picks. I think Jameis Winston makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much everything you guys said. The other thing with Jameis Winston, I think, is he knows with the Giants, the situation that they're in, and he's going to get an opportunity to start. He's not going to be pulled after 2 or 3 weeks. So this would also give him a platform if they sign him to a 1-year deal to go out there and test the market again. And like Adriana mentioned, he's throwing 2 Malik Neighbors, probably going to add another wide receiver. Theo Johnson should come back healthy. So, there could be some potential there for Jameis Winston. And again, I know we all talked about Justin Fields and why I think Justin Fields would be a good addition for the Giants as well. The mentorship thing, I don't think Fields has. He's still a young kid. He's been in the league for a while, but Jameis Winston has a ton of experience. Jameis Winston's also dealt with some turmoil early in his career as well. So he can kind of tell these rookies what to do, what not to do. He'd be a good type of mentor for the rookies. So listen, I can definitely see Jameis Winston being a Giant. I think a lot of, even before he came out and said this, a lot of us, we talked about Jameis being a Giant a long time ago. That he was one of the options for sure. And, sounds like he might end up being a Giant. So we'll see how that goes without question. Let's get to some of these super chats. Appreciate you guys and girls being here. 200 in the house. We appreciate you. Give us a little like, subscribe, all that good stuff. February is going to be a little bit, dead.
We got the Super
Once
Bowl.
we get to the end of it, because the end of the month is the combine. So we'll have a lot more to talk about. So you guys want to make sure you do that. And as we get to the offseason, we might add another show because there's going to be a ton to talk about. I got to get these off. There we go. So it's going to do. JJan, thank you. He says, thank you for all the content. Let's go, Eli.
Let's go, Eli. First ballot.
Yep.
We'll find out tomorrow.
Yeah.
We're all booking our flights to Canton tomorrow.
What's that?
We're all booking our flights to Canton tomorrow.
Yeah. Listen, Eli needs to book his. Like I said, just give us Giants fans something to cheer about. It's been a long 12 years. Chris, thank you so much. He says Eli in 2025, hopefully Coughlin in 2026. Yeah, Coughlin needs to be in the Hall of Fame too. It's ridiculous that he's not. Again, how many coaches have won multiple Super Bowls and are not in the Hall of Fame? Yeah. That one I have not researched, but
he'll get in eventually. The coaches are harder to get in because only one gets in a year. So,
is that what it is?
Yeah, but he'll get it.
It took Tom Flores a while to get in, and he won 2 Super Bowls with the Raiders. So
yeah, he'll get
that was one thing I said on Twitter. Talking about Eli being in the Hall of Fame, and someone says to me, I said, no, every other quarterback that's won multiple Super Bowl MVPs is in the Hall of Fame. And the guy says, Jim Plunkett's not in the Hall of Fame. I'm like, go back and read what I said. I didn't say multiple Super Bowls. I said multiple Super Bowl MVPs, but it's Twitter. I don't expect much from Twitter. X, whatever you want to call it. Dr. Garrett's in the house, our longtime friend, Dr. Garrett. Thank you, buddy. He says, truth is, if Plax doesn't misfire, there's no debate. You guys are awesome, and I appreciate you. Well, thank you. We appreciate you. Let's talk about that really quick. Chris, start with you. Plaxico Burress, to me, listen, man, I'm old enough to remember the 86 Giants. I say this all the time. They were a special team, no question about it, led by their defense. So offense struggled a lot of the year in 86. And I will put that now. The 86, if you match up the 86 2008 team, the 86 team might win. But I'm telling you, for my money, that 2008 Giants team is the most complete team I've ever seen in my life. They were top 5 in offense and defense. We probably win the Super Bowl in 2008 if Burris
we would have.
Would we have won more? Because 2009.
Yeah, we've talked about this before many a times on our show, Bad Dog, and I think it's a good hypothetical. It's the biggest what if since I've been watching the New York Giants. I don't go back as far as you. I go back to the early to mid 90s. That is
thanks for rubbing at it.
That is undoubtedly the best regular season Giants team I've ever seen. The 2008 one. The two teams that played in the Super Bowl the year, they beat them both in the regular season. Yeah. They beat the Steelers. They beat the Arizona Cardinals. They had a top 5 defensive line. They had a top 5 offensive line. They could run the ball at will. Eli made plays when he needed to make them. That team was going to win the Super Bowl that year. I have no doubt in my mind. But the hypothetical that nobody ever brings up when they say that, I agree with everybody that says that we would have won 2. But does Eli get 3 if Plax doesn't shoot himself? Because what that changes, more than likely, you either don't draft Hakeem Nicks or Victor Cruz never gets his shot, who were both instrumental in the 2011 Super Bowl. So, you could play the what-if game, but they may never win the 2011 Super Bowl if Plax never shoots himself. But we've talked about it several times, Bad Dog. If Plax doesn't shoot himself, we talk about Giants who are not in the Hall of Fame. I said we've only 3. There would have been a lot more guys that had a chance to make the Hall of Fame if the Giants go back-to-back. Chris Snee, that great offensive line, right? Members of that offensive line, if they go back-to-back, they got a real shot to make the Hall of Fame. Plaxico Burress would have had a real shot to make the Hall of Fame himself. So that ruined a lot of the legacies of a lot of the players that were on that 07 and 08 team that would have went back-to-back. But I don't know if they win 3 Super Bowls with Eli if Plax never shoots himself, because I don't think we end up with both Nicks and Cruz.
Anthony, what do you think? Are the Giants a dynasty if Burris doesn't do that crap?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. It's so funny how close the Giants were to being a dynasty. I mean, 2 Super Bowls in 4 years. Had they gone to the conference championship in those other 2 years, you can make the argument that was a 4-year dynasty, right? Like 2 Super Bowls in that short amount of time. If they had more playoff success surrounding those other 2 Super Bowl runs, we would probably talk about the New York Giants being a dynasty. And I honestly think they should have ended up winning that Super Bowl. The Plaxico thing was so terribly unfortunate. I was obviously a little bit younger, so it doesn't stick out in my memory quite as much as it does for you guys, but I do remember it. In fact, I actually remember the day after the incident, I went to my grandparents' house, my great-grandpa at the time. He was like fresh off the boat from Italy. Oh my God, was he livid. He was screaming his head off. It was one of the funniest things that I've ever seen, just this animated Italian man losing his mind over Plaxico Burress. And I think he even liked the Jets, but he just rooted for the Giants because the rest of the family did. So it was just funny, but man, that was tragic. And listen, Eli's going to go first ballot anyway. I'm pretty confident he gets in tomorrow night, but yeah, if he had that 3rd Super Bowl, it's not even close to becoming a debate.
Yeah. Adriana, did we win more than 1 Super Bowl? Think about it. We started 5-0 in 2009. We finished 8-8. We were 10-6 in 2010, which that was the Sean Jackson thing. That was the Miracle in the Meadowlands 2 that kept us out of the 2 seed. And Burris was always an eagle killer, which is why I know if we had a Burris in 2008, we're winning the damn Super Bowl. But how many, you think we would have won more than just 2008? You think it would have been a dynasty?
I think it could have been really close. I think if Plaxico doesn't shoot himself, then I don't think there's a big question that they wouldn't have gone back-to-back there. I just felt like that team, like you guys said, like it was so dominant. I don't know what would have happened if they didn't get Nicks and some of the couple years later in 2012, but that team was so good, and we just haven't seen anything remotely close to that since then, pretty much. And it's so disappointing. But it's wild to me. But I mean, look, the Bills don't have any Super Bowls, but they've come close enough where they have been so good in the last couple of years, and they just can't get past the AFC Championship. But it makes me wonder, like, if they just had gotten past, one AFC Championship and just made it to the Super Bowl, would we be talking about a similar circumstance there? They have come so close and just haven't been able to pull it off. But I don't know. It's so hard with the Giants because in the most recent history, they've been so bad for so long that them and dynasty in the same sentence seems foreign.
You want to hear the most insane stat? If you go back to that 2007 team, they started 0-2 that year, if you remember. And they had the goal
gave up 80 points in the first 2 games.
80 points in the first 2 games. People were calling for Steve Spagnuolo's head. And then they have the goal line stand against Washington week 3. They get to 1-2. If you go back to that 0-2 start in 2007 and you include the playoff games, the New York Giants from week 3 of 2007 up until when Plaxico Burress shot himself went 25-5 over that 30-game span, including obviously a Super Bowl win against the New England Patriots. That's how dominant they were during that 30 games. That's a 2-year sample size, basically. 30 straight games. They were 25-5. And one of the losses came to the undefeated Patriots in the last game of the regular season where they nearly won.
Yep. It's insane. Like Adriana said, it's so far away from where we are now, but it is crazy to look back and think of how dominant the Giants were from 2005 to 2012. They were one of the best teams in football. I mean, right there with the Patriots. They won 11 games in 2005. They made the playoffs in 06, won a Super Bowl in 07. Best team in football in 2008. Didn't get past the Eagles. 2009, 8-8. 2010, 10-6. 2011 Super Bowl. 2012, they were 9-7. So this team was always competing, and then right off a cliff with no warning. And since that 2012 season, we've had 2 seasons where we've been over 500. Not good at all. But Shane, Dable, fix it. Let's go. JJ, and thank you. He says, after Eli, it's got to be Tiki and Coughlin. I've been talking about Tiki Barber being in the damn Hall of Fame for years. Coughlin definitely, there's no question. Coughlin's going to get it. Coughlin's going to get it. Chris, Tiki Hall of Famer?
Yeah, he's definitely a Hall of Famer. It sucks, and I did not like the way it ended with Tiki Barber because I'm the biggest Eli fan there is, like I said, and I do not like the way that he threw Eli and Coughlin under the bus on his way out, especially everything that Tom Coughlin did for him. And I understand there was some animosity there with Tiki Barber because he felt like he kind of used and abused him, right? He felt like his career ended earlier than maybe it would have had that not been the case. But he fixed that guy's fumbling issues. Coughlin got there, snapped his fingers. Suddenly, Tiki Barber knew how to hold on to the football. And that is what propelled him to be the running back he became. But, Tiki Barber, for a 3-year stretch there, if you combine those 3 years, no running back in the NFL had more scrimmage yards over that 3-year sample size in the NFL. Like, he was incredible. He was in the same category as guys like LaDainian Tomlinson and Marshall Faulk in that era, like for that 3 or 4 year stretch. And he was great throughout the entirety of his career. So if Tiki Barber plays another year, that's another great what if. If Tiki Barber plays another year, he certainly makes the Hall of Fame, I think. But my what if is, do the Giants still win that Super Bowl? Because Eli Manning definitely matured after Tiki Barber was out of the huddle, after Jeremy Shockey was out of the huddle. And the other thing, you don't have that running back by committee. So we all know that Brandon Jacobs is not better than Tiki Barber. We all know that, Derek Ward and Ahmad Bradshaw are not better individually. But as a whole, as a committee, you could certainly make that argument. They had the best rushing attack in football that year. If Tiki's back with the team, you never have that running back by committee. Does Tiki wear out during those playoffs? So that's another what if I often think about. If Tiki does come back, putting the huddle stuff aside, is the running attack as good as it was?
Adrian, is he a Hall of Famer?
I think so. I think that all of the stuff off the field and the things that he said about Eli and Coughlin and all of that fans have focused so much on that they kind of forgotten about the career that he had with the Giants, which is pretty crazy. But, no one is talking about their personality and what he did off the field as to whether or not he should be a Hall of Famer. When you look at the stats and you look at what he did in his career with the Giants, I don't think there's any question. And I feel like he's come pretty close. So I feel like, in the next couple of years, we should see him in there.
Anthony, is he a Hall of Famer?
I think so. I think all the points that Chris made, especially that 3-year run that he had, was just absolutely ridiculous. And if you compare his stats then to any of the running backs then, and if you look at his stats then and compare them to some of the best running backs in the NFL right now who get that Hall of Fame label, absolutely he stacks up and he deserves it. One player that I think not enough people mention, he's probably not a Hall of Famer, and obviously he's not right now, but I think somebody deserves at least a little bit of buzz but gets none of it. Justin Tuck. He was a first-team All-Pro, a two-time Pro Bowler, a second-team All-Pro in another season, 2 rings, some of the most important sacks in NFL history that led to Super Bowl wins. He gets 0 buzz. Not saying that he is a Hall of Famer, that he's going to get anytime soon, but sometimes those older guys, you get 40 years removed. I could see Justin Tuck one day getting in there, and I think he deserves some buzz.
He's a perfect example of what I talked about, of a guy that got ruined by the Plaxico Burress shooting himself in terms of his Hall of Fame candidacy. If the Giants go back to back, Justin Tuck might be in the Hall of Fame. Like, we don't know what that does to his career and his legacy as a New York Giant. But he's my second favorite Giant of all time. Eli's 1, Justin Tuck's 2. I love the face mask. I love everything about Justin Tuck. He was a leader. Like, you want to talk about a guy who loved being a Giant. I've never seen a player take more pride in being a New York Giant than Justin Tuck. He loved being a New York Giant. Love him. He was a fringe Hall of Famer, not quite a Hall of Famer, but very close.
Agreed.
I always make the argument for Tiki, and I love it. I love to piss Cowboys fans off when I tell them he was better than Emmitt Smith. They get very mad at that. I say Tiki Barber averaged a half yard more per carry. Tiki Barber is one of 3 running backs in the history of the NFL that have 10,000 rushing yards and 5,000 receiving yards. The other 2 are Marshall Faulk and Marcus Allen. They're both in the Hall of Fame. Tiki Barber had over 10,000 yards rushing in his career and was a starter for 7 seasons. Yeah, he didn't have a lot of rushing touchdowns. That's because they had Ron Dane there and they had Brandon Jacobs to take those touchdowns away from him, much like they did to Barry Sanders. Barry Sanders was never getting the ball on the 1 yard line. And it never made any sense to me. Why wouldn't you give the ball to your best player on the 1 yard line? But even the last game Tiki played in the regular season as a Giant, he went for 240 yards and 3 touchdowns against the Washington Redskins to get us into the playoffs. Tiki Barber at the end of his career ran for 3,500 yards in his last 2 seasons. He led the league in yards from scrimmage, I think, twice out of the last 3 years. He was incredible, man. Why he's not in the Hall of Fame does not make any sense to me. I don't understand. He said some stupid things. Whatever. I don't hold this stuff against him when they're not. I've said this a million times. When they're not on the team anymore, I don't really care what they do. I know what he did when he was here. I know how how good he was. He was incredible. He was our best player the last few years he was here. So he's a Hall of Famer, man. Put the damn guy in Canton already. I don't know what the hell they're waiting for, man. He's one of the best players to not be in the Hall of Fame, if you ask me.
Oh,
go ahead, Chris. Sorry.
No, incredible. I agree. He's a Hall of Famer. Listen, I named my dog after Tiki Barber. I was in love with Tiki Barber growing up as a kid. He was the first Giant I fell in love with. Fell head over heels in love with Tiki Barber as a kid. Couldn't wait to wear his jersey to school every day. Incredible receiver. Like we say it all. The screen game with Tiki Barber was out of this world. But yeah, no, he's all. I think it's what you said though, and what we all said. I think it's what has kept him out thus far. Is he didn't really get support from his own fans because they were so upset at the way that he handled his departure from the New York Giants. I think that has a lot to do with it.
I'm just thinking about how old I am when Chris says he couldn't wait to wear his Tiki Barber's first shot, and I'm going back to Lawrence Taylor for crying out loud.
I was in like 7th grade. I couldn't. Yeah, I was having my Tiki Barber jersey on at least once every other week.
When I was in 7th grade, LT was still in his prime, so it just tells you how long ago that was. Kevin, thank you so much. With the Giants needing another playmaker, would any of you consider signing Kyron Lacey if he goes undrafted and gets the legal issues resolved? Anthony,
I'll consider anybody if they make the New York Giants a better player, but I'm actually going to redact that because I don't know the legal issues and I don't want to. So I don't know. I can't remember what his problem is, and so I'm not going to advocate for him either way right now.
Yeah. I just looked it up because I also didn't know. So he allegedly was involved in a car crash because he was speeding and driving erratically, they think, which head-on collision killed a 78-year-old man. His lawyer is claiming that he was not the one who caused the collision, that another car came over the center line and he got I guess he couldn't stop in time and slammed into the cars. So that was the update as of today. So I guess we'll see what happens with the legal team. If they have footage, if they can prove that it wasn't him. He's an LSU wide receiver. He never had over 1,000-yard season, but he played with Malik Neighbors, comes from LSU. I think we all know what LSU wide receivers are like. They do seem to have that LSU wide receiver diva thing. But in my opinion, I feel like if they can prove that this was not him and he was no way involved, I'm always down to take a chance on an LSU wide receiver and think that, Malik Neighbors could maybe be some sort of mentor to him.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, if it gets resolved, then, and if he goes undrafted or whatever, I mean, again, if he's going to make the New York Giants a better team, then I absolutely consider it. But I think that, like the LSU wide receivers are tremendous, but there are also the DJ Charks and Booties of the world. So,
Booty in more ways than one.
Exactly. It's not always a 100% success rate. So Kyron Lacy, if these legal issues weren't here and he was a legitimate player, I don't think we'd be talking about him going undrafted. So he's probably not much of a needle mover anyway.
True. Chris, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, listen, if the Giants are okay with him, obviously we don't get to interview these players. We don't know, we don't know the ins and outs. We watch games on Saturdays and Sundays and we evaluate that way. And, we formulate opinions that way. But if the Giants feel comfortable with him and he's cleared of all charges, sure, take a flyer on the guy. Why not? But yeah, and certainly not a guy I'm even thinking about right now. My head's on quarterback and what we're going to do in free agency. But if they want to take a shot on a wide receiver they think has some upside, sure, why not? As long as he clears charges and the Giants are comfortable with him.
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about undrafted, I'm not that far along. I'm looking at free agency and that first pick. I mean, that's really what the first and maybe the second pick, depending on what they do with the first pick. But yeah, I haven't really gotten past the second round in the draft yet.
Well, this is the type of draft where I can't help but just be fixated on the first pick because it's not a normal draft where when we had Daniel Jones, we knew we weren't taking a quarterback. So you're like, okay, how are they going to build the rest of this roster? Right now, we don't have a quarterback. So that's where everything starts, man. Like that's where my head's at right now is who's going to be our quarterback going forward.
Yeah, exactly. Chris, thank you, brother. He says James would be a perfect to start a few games while Shedeur Sanders. He's already saying the Giants are going to get Shedeur Sanders adjusted to the league, similar to what the Pats did this year with Brissett in May. Yeah, that's what a lot of teams do. They don't want to throw the rookie right into the fire out of the frying pan, so they get a bridge guy to. That's what the Vikings did with Sam Darnold. I'm sure they didn't expect Darnold to start all year, but McCarthy had the injury. But this is a trend in the NFL, and it certainly would help our rookie, whoever it is, if it's Sanders, if it's Ward, if it's somebody else. No question about it. No question about it. Oh, real quick, and not that I cared about this, but Chris will start with you. So I guess supposedly I saw this on Instagram. Mm-hmm. They asked Malik Neighbors about Shedeur Sanders' Giants cleats. Did you see that?
No.
Okay. Did any of you guys see that?
I did see that he's done it twice now. And again, I don't read too much into tweets. Malik Neighbors twice now has tweeted out number 9 with the Ram symbol as if to hint at Matthew Stafford. And I've seen people go crazy about that.
I was wondering what he meant by that because I saw it today and I was like, what is that supposed to mean?
I think it means Stafford. I think it means Stafford because the Rams are giving off vibes that they're looking to blow it up. They said they're going to trade Cooper Kupp. So I actually the first one he said 9-10, which is Kupp's number, along with Stafford.
Oh,
so
interesting.
That's one thing I saw.
I didn't see, but none of you guys saw that. It wasn't a big deal. Some people made a big deal of it. They asked him about it, and all he said was no comment. No comment. That was all he said, but everybody made a big deal about it. Oh, he doesn't want Shedeur Sanders. I'm like, maybe he just doesn't want to say anything about it because if he knows what the New York media is trying to do.
People did the same thing to him last year. You remember when he was on some Instagram Live and everybody took it. I forgot who it was. It was with Caleb Williams, I think. And Caleb Williams said something along the lines of Daniel Jones is going to be throwing you the football. And then he immediately ended the live stream. And then everybody started going on Twitter saying, "Oh, he doesn't want to be a Giant. He doesn't want to be a Giant." He was
right.
And then I actually tweeted out, I'm like, actually, the way I took it that was the complete opposite. Is that he knows he's probably going to be a Giant, and he doesn't want Caleb Williams throwing that out there because he doesn't want to affect his draft spot. So I think sometimes people read way too much into this.
I was just I'm like, you said no comment. What is wrong with no comment?
That could mean that he knows they're probably going to take Shedeur Sanders. And
right,
the Giants fan. You could just as easily say that.
Yeah. JJ, thank you so much. Any chance we get T. Higgins and smash that like button? You know what? I'm going to say probably not. I don't think that T. Higgins is looking at about $30 million a year. I don't think we're paying him that. I think we have too many other holes to fill. I think that Washington can make a serious run on him because they have a lot of money. I'm sure the Giants will inquire, but I don't see him being a Giant Adriana, what do you think?
I agree. I would love him. I think it would be great, but I think that he supposedly has said that he would maybe take a pay cut to stay with the Bengals. I think you're going to have teams like the Commanders, the Patriots, the Bears. You're going to have other teams in contention that have a shitload more money than the Giants do and a lot less holes that I don't see it happening.
Anthony, what do you think?
I saw the screenshot today of Malik Neighbors and Isaiah Simmons were on the phone with T. Higgins, and so there's speculation that they're trying to recruit him to the Giants, but the Giants are one of the least attractive options, in my opinion, if you're T. Higgins. Going from Joe Burrow to a complete unknown at quarterback, I don't know how you do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, Isaiah Simmons is not going to be here next year.
Yeah, right. He's an unrestricted free agent. But he is friends, I guess, with T. Higgins because they played at Clemson together. But yeah, I don't even think he's going to be on the Giants next year. But I do think it's worth clarifying because I saw somebody in the chat ask it, what is the Giants salary cap number? According to Over the Cap, the Giants are projected to have $43 million in salary cap space this offseason. But the real number that you want to consider is effective salary cap space, which is the cap space a team will have after signing at least 51 players and its projected rookie class to its roster. At that number, the New York Giants are $32 million in effective salary cap space. That's really not a whole lot of money. It ranks about, I think, 12th in the NFL in effective salary cap space. Now, obviously, they can make more room. They can restructure Thomas. They can restructure Lawrence. Okay. They have a lot of different moves.
Or they can structure the incoming free agents in a way.
Yes, and they can backload the contracts for the incoming free agents. But when you're talking about a T. Higgins who wants $30+ million per season with only $32 million effective cap space and as many holes as the Giants have, I think that's the real key here. They have to make the most of all $32 million of those dollars. And that's why I don't think they are going to shop at a T. Higgins level. You go down to that next step where a wide receiver costs $15 million per season. And that's probably where the New York Giants are shopping if they're trying to get a playmaker. But Higgins, you're talking about the teams like the Patriots, Raiders, and Commanders all have at least $68 million in effective salary cap space. Those are the teams that are an option.
Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, I think the main reason, I do think the Giants are going to sign a wide receiver and free agent. Like a pretty good one. I don't know who. Maybe it's Godwin coming. I don't know. I don't know. But I don't think it'll be Higgins. But I think the biggest reason, the money aside, because I do think the Giants would be interested in Higgins because ultimately Joe Shane knows he's going to be judged on this quarterback. He's going to want to set that quarterback up as well as he possibly can. And getting a legitimate number 2 wide receiver opposite Malik Neighbors is going to assist in that. But I think it's for the main reason that Anthony said. Like, the other options are so much better for a guy like T. Higgins. You don't know what Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders are going to be. You've seen what Drake May potentially could be for a year. That's probably more attractive than a complete unknown. As well as the Washington, you saw what Jaden Daniels looked like. You get to be that guy's number 1 option for the next 5 years. That's a much more attractive offer. Not to mention Washington has more money to spend. So yeah, even though I think the Giants would have interest in Higgins if he wanted to come here, I don't think we're going to be his number 1 spot. But I do think the Giants will sign a wide receiver and they'll spend at least, like Anthony said, in that $15 to $18 million range. I think they'll prioritize that position in free agency.
Bob, thank you. Says, I don't think it'll happen, but would or should the Giants take Eli up on his offer to scout quarterbacks for the upcoming draft? Chris, what do you think?
Let me just read that. I don't think it'll happen, but would or should the Giants take Eli up on his offer to help scout I mean, I see no reason not to. I mean, he's a former, he's a Hall of Fame quarterback. I don't care what anybody says. He's a Hall of Fame quarterback. He knows the position as well as most people. So I don't see any reason why they wouldn't at least, ask him for his opinion. That doesn't mean he's going to make the pick or have a heavy influence on the quarterback that they choose. But why not use all the tools that you have? I see no reason not to ask for his opinion.
Anthony, what do you think?
Absolutely, they should. And for the main reason being, I don't know if there are any quarterbacks, draftable quarterbacks in the world who haven't met Eli Manning at the Manning Passing Academy. Almost every legitimate quarterback goes through the Manning Passing Academy while they're in college and then goes to the NFL. So he's met all of them. He has a good relationship with Jackson Dart, who is a fan favorite for Giants fans, but also Riley Leonard, Will Howard. He met all of those guys. Almost everybody in this draft class has gone to the Manning Passing Academy. And for that reason, no, maybe he's not the best talent evaluator and scout. He hasn't really done that in his career, but he is a Hall of Fame quarterback. He is a Super Bowl winning quarterback, and he's met them on an individual personal level. So he could say, hey, at the Manning Passing Academy, this guy's work ethic really stood out. This guy, not so much. That's valuable insight for the New York Giants if he's in the front office and sharing that information, which I think oftentimes gets overlooked when we talk about Eli scouting. And the only rebuttal that I ever hear whenever I say the Giants should ask Eli for help, they say, oh, but he liked Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones came from the Mannings. Okay, but he was on the football team.
That's what I said.
Eli Manning wasn't watching film on Daniel Jones. He just knew him. Like,
right.
Yeah, and the other rebuttal,
what is he going to say?
The other rebuttal I'll say to that, Anthony, is he didn't want Daniel Jones to be a New York Giant. He wanted them to draft anything but a quarterback with that pick.
Exactly.
So yeah, I completely agree. That to me is the silliest argument when people bring that up. He wasn't killing for the Giants to draft a quarterback. He wanted to stay on as the starting quarterback.
Right. Adriana, what do you think?
I agree. I mean, I think it's never going to hurt for you to have someone who played the position and won 2 Super Bowls in the New York market for this team. It'll never be anything bad. And I think it's just like what they do with Chris Snee. You have an expert at the position who played the position, who knows how to do it well, who knows how to win at it. And, you listen to what they have to say, take in their opinion, and, go from there. Like Chris said, like, they're not going to be like, all right, Eli, you go pick the quarterback and we'll just sit back. But, you take his opinion, see what he has to say, and go from there. I think
you're not getting enough information on any of these guys. Not all opinions matter. And
and I also think, like, another valuable thing that we talk about a lot, and I think the Giants do take stock into this, especially at the quarterback position when they draft one, maybe sometimes too much stock into it. But Eli Manning knows how to handle the media in New York. I think, especially at the quarterback position, that's valuable too. And if he could nip, like Anthony said, a lot of these guys have gone to his passing camp. He knows their personalities. The Giants would be stupid not to do everything in their power to pick up every rock, look underneath every rock before they choose the quarterback they're going to select. So yeah, I see no reason not to try to get some insight from Eli Manning.
Yeah. JJ, and thank you, says 2008 almost had 1,000-yard rushers. Yeah, the Giants killed that year, dominated. They averaged 5 yards a carry as a team. They led the world in rushing yards, and they did have 2,000-yard backs and Jacobs and Ward. They were incredibly dominant. Jeremy's World says after Eli, Shador will be, what is that thing?
That's the watch. He always shows the watch off at the
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Probably. I'm a watch guy.
He's got to change his picture, man.
Yeah,
it's long gone, man.
The dream is not dead. It will
no. I'll take Caleb Williams. You want the 3rd overall pick? Give me Caleb Williams. I'll do that in a heartbeat. JJ says we'll be back. We just need our quarterback. It all starts there. There's still a lot to be done. You still got to build around the QB, but yeah, we're gonna find out.
I'm gonna be buying a watch this offseason because I think it's gonna be Shador. So I'm rocking with them.
I collect watches, so I'll have to figure out one on draft night.
Oh, me too, bad dog.
All right, we'll have to have a watch.
We can talk about watches this offseason.
Yeah. That's how exciting it's coming to the New York Giants. Oh, John, which watch you wearing today? I got my long jeans moon phase on today. Oh, good, great. Yes, I got my Omega moon watch today. It's fantastic. Chris also, thank you, Chris, says Eli is also Walter Payton Man of the Year winner. He is. He's a Hall of Famer. He's a Hall of Fame person. He's a Hall of Fame player. Put the man in Canton where he belongs. I think character has a lot to do with getting in the Hall of Fame as well. And nobody's going to question Eli Manning's character.
No.
John, thank you so much. Assuming the Giants draft Ward, Sanders, Dart, or Milroe, what free agent quarterback would you like to pair with each of the 4 drafted quarterbacks? I think we discussed that earlier. I'm pretty sure we'd all be comfortable with Jameis Winston. Is there somebody else you would prefer?
Well, what I'll say to that, Bad Dog, I don't think I'm changing my opinion on this. Cam Ward or Shador Sanders is going to be a New York Giant.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be Jackson Dart. I don't think it's going to be Jalen Miller. I think they're taking a quarterback with the 3rd pick, or they're trading up to get one to ensure they get one of those 2 guys. That's what I honestly believe. But in the scenario where that doesn't happen, and they end up with Jalen Miller or Jackson Dart in the 2nd round or the 3rd round or whatever it may be, I actually think you go more the Justin Fields route. I would rather have a guy that could potentially become a long-term starter, or at least have the possibility to become a long-term starter. I think the value of a Jameis Winston is he's a guy that's a veteran that's been around the league, that's not going to embarrass you for 6 to 8 weeks. He could show the ropes to the number 1 or number 3 overall pick or whatever it may be. So I do actually think you probably try to target a quarterback with more of a ceiling if you go the 2nd or 3rd round route at the quarterback position.
Either one of you guys think there's somebody better than Jameis Winston?
Fields is my only other.
Fields.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or you trade for one. I don't know who would become available, but
yeah.
If Stafford does become available, you make the trade for Stafford. But I don't think he's going to become available. I know that was mentioned earlier. I think he'd rather retire than upend his life. And
why would you want to get killed on the Giants?
Yeah, why? I mean, you're solidified. You're a Hall of Famer. You just won a Super Bowl with the Rams a few years ago. I don't see any incentive for Stafford to leave, especially.
Why would you? Yeah, I agree.
The Giants coming off of a 3-14 season, it doesn't make sense.
I was going to say, if you're Stafford, why would you want to go to a rebuild?
Right.
At this point in your career, if you're going anywhere, you want to go somewhere where you think you can win a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
You're not going somewhere to start over at this point in your career. Team Knockout says if Myles Garrett leaves, where do you think he's going?
I think he is leaving. He came out and said he's demanding.
Which is why I think they're taking Abdul Carter.
Yeah, there's a couple ways you can read that. I didn't know how to read that. I'm curious to get your guys' take on that, because one way you could say is, they're taking Abdul Carter. Myles Garrett wants out. They're going to get his replacement for pennies on the dollar. The other thing that you could say is, well, Myles Garrett may be like, well, they're going to draft a rookie quarterback. I don't want to have to sit here and be patient. I'm 30 years old or whatever he is. I've been a Brown my whole life. I don't want to have to sit through the young quarterback. That was actually the way I more so took that. I'm actually more leaning that they're going quarterback now at this point, but I don't think Tennessee's going quarterback.
I think they're in the perfect situation to trade Garrett for a late first-round pick, take the BPA at 3, and then do what Giants fans have said and take Dart later.
I can see that too.
I think they're perfect situation for that. Plus, I think that Stefanski wants to reunite with Kirk Cousins, and I think he'll end up being the bridge for a late first or second round quarterback. So that's what I think the Browns are trying to position themselves. If they do move on from Garrett, that's how I would do it if I were them. But I'm no GM, and I don't know what the Browns are doing, and I don't know. Browns are a terrible organization, so they probably take it right.
If anybody can compete with us for the worst organization in football, it's them.
Oh,
they're right
and
up
the Jets.
And the Jets.
Yeah.
The Jets.
The Jets will jet.
The Jets will jet. I say it every year. The Jets will jet. Don J, thank you. Kayvon versus Dez Beef. What do you think of that? I thought it was funny, and I'm going to stick up for Kayvon every time he's a Giant.
Yeah, I get so disgusted when I go on Twitter and I see Giants fans agreeing with Dez Bryant when he's getting into a verbal alter or whatever you call it, a keyboard match,
right?
With Kayvon Thibodeau.
Twitter war. It's a Twitter war.
A Twitter war, Twitter beef, whatever you want to call it. Like, even if you think Dez Bryant got a good punch here and there, you got to stick up for your guy, man. So, I those aren't Giants fans to me. People are like, oh yeah, Dez Bryant, you got him there. No, shut up. He's a Cowboy.
I just kept letting Dez know he dropped it. That's just all.
Yeah.
You dropped it, Dez. That's it. That's all I put. You dropped it, Dez. So,
yeah.
What
I will say that I like what Kayvon said. Putting that aside, the interview that I saw on Twitter at the Super Bowl, where he literally said, he said I hate, he said it 8 times how much he hates the Cowboys. I'm like, I need more of that. I need more Giants fans like that.
Yeah.
Yes. Where I was like, where is this Kayvon? This is the Kayvon that I want to see. I want to see a competitive person who hates our rivals, whether they're old or it's Micah Parsons and you're going one-on-one against him now. Like, this is what I want to see. He earns so much respect from me. The fact that I finally was like, oh, Kayvon likes to be a Giant more than he likes to be in the spotlight in New York City. Now, show it to us on the field this year. He will become my new favorite Giant if he can do that, because
maybe that will light a fire under his ass, which would be great.
I hope so.
It'd be great.
Yeah.
With that said, that wraps up another edition of Giants Collective. We'll be back next week. We'll have a Super Bowl winner. Hopefully it's Kansas City. And, I'm sure at that
let's
point.
Get the picks before we go. What's the picks? Let me get the picks.
Well, we're all picking the Chiefs.
Yeah.
Give
me your final score predictions.
34-31.
Ooh, you're going high scoring.
Yeah, 24-21 KC.
What about you, Anthony? What do you got?
I think it's going to be really close. I think 30-28. I think it's going to be within under 3
low scoring. I think I'm more in line with Bad Dog. I'm going a 20. I was gonna say 24-21, but I can't do that now. I'm gonna go 20.
Too long, Chris.
I'm gonna go 26-23 Chiefs. I think it'll be really.
I don't care.
Middle to low scoring.
Just win, please, Kansas City.
Yeah.
We'll have that to talk about, and there'll probably be more rumors. And obviously, next week we'll be getting much closer to the combine, which starts at the very end of the month. So. Until then, appreciate you all tuning in. If you haven't done so, again, please like it, subscribe, all that good stuff. For Adriana, Anthony, and Chris, it is Bad Dog. We'll see you next time. We out. Peace.